What is going on YouTube? This is the beginner's guide to the Fimi Navi app. So let's get started and jump into it. All right, so let's get started. And I just wanted to give you some context how we're going to do this. We're going to start in the upper left-hand corner of the Navi app, and then we're going to work our way all the way across to the upper right-hand corner of the app and go over all these variables. And then we're going to go and work our way from the upper right to the lower right corner of the app. And then we're going to jump over to the map area and then work our way from lower left all the way to the lower right side, and we are going to get all those variables understood and figured out, so when we go out there and start flying, we'll get the best shots out of our flight because we have set up the best settings for the flying conditions we're at. So we need to get to know this app so well that when we're out there flying, it's like secondhand. You know where all the variables are and you know how to change it. All right, so with that said, why don't we just get started and get this thing going? All right, let's get started with the Navi app. Here we have two of my buddies to make things more visually stimulating. We have Mr. Frog and Mr. Bear. First icon, upper left-hand corner is the vertical arrows. Those are your height. Next icon is your horizontal arrows. That is your distance away from your controller. And next icon to the right is VS and HS, vertical speed and horizontal speed. In the middle, where it says ready to go, and VPU, that is your status icon. To the right of that status icon, you will see your GPS icon. To the right of that, you will see your FPV signal icon with the little radiating bar that will turn yellow and then red when you're about to lose signal. And to the right of that, you'll see the flight controller signal icon, and that will also go from yellow to red when you're getting ready to disconnect. To the right of that is your battery icon. I currently have 11.49 volts and have 45% battery left. To the right of that, we see the gear, and that is the settings for the flight controllers and the gimbal, and a couple of things. We'll get into that a little further on. Below that, you'll see three slide bars, and those are your camera settings, and we'll jump into that later. Also, below that, you'll see a little movie camera and a camera that is switching between camera and movie mode, and currently recording with 1 minute and 50 seconds left. And that is the icon for record and stop record. Below that, you'll see an icon of a picture. You access your cache pictures. Below that, you will see an icon of a little robot that has two antennas and a little circle on top. That is your autonomous mode. To the left of that is auto takeoff, and to the left of that is auto landing. Return to home, RTH. Okay, so let's get into the bottom half of the icons. On the lower left-hand quadrant is the map. You hit it, you go to map mode, and then back to FPV mode. To the right, continuing from left to right, is the little, what looks like a little square with an angle finder. That is the angle of your pitch camera icon. And I'm going to move my wheel on my left index finger down, and you will see it change to 9.5. The next icon says EV, and that is your exposure value, and you can adjust that by turning your right index finger wheel. And currently I just changed it to 0.7. Next icon says ISO, that's You can change it to auto or manual mode in the camera settings. We'll talk about that a little later. The next icon you see what looks like to be a aperture. It is currently set to auto. We'll talk about that later. And then what you see next is looks like 3 little circles. That is your color icon, and I currently have it set to film. We'll talk some more about that. Next icon you see that says SD card, that is your storage, currently going from low speed to the amount of storage left while I'm recording. To the right of that you will see a movie camera, and that is the resolution that the camera is set to. And currently it is set to 4K 24 frames a second. Okay, so we are done with the icons on the Navi app. Now we're going to press the gear in the upper right hand corner and jump into the flight controllers and settings. So first thing you need to do is to increase the flight speed to the maximum, and also increase your flight distance to the maximum. Also, you're going to have to change your flight height or your maximum altitude allowed in your country. United States is 400 feet is the max altitude, and that equates to a little bit less than 122 meters. And I have it set to 121.8 meters to stay within the law. Next thing you need to change is your RTH altitude. You need to change this to higher than the highest structure around you. The next thing below that is beginner's mode. This limits your speed and distance and height a great deal. Sports mode, on the other hand, is super fast and super quick, so be careful with that one. The next thing you see below that is the amount of magnetic interference. In this particular case is green, which is good. Compass calibration, I'm sure you've all seen many people do the compass calibration. Just follow the Navi app once you hit this compass calibration button on the right. On the fail-safe, set it to RTH, and that will always come back to the launch point. Precise landing. Recommend that you set this on. The optical flow camera takes a picture or a note of the launching helipad and matches it when it's coming back to it. Xiaomi Fimi recommends they use the orange helipad to get best results. The next thing we see is the update dynamic home point in Smart Track. I do not recommend you enable this because it will change the home point to the drone's location while in Smart Track. Next thing we see just below that is gain and expo and tuning. Do not recommend you change any of these. Leave them default. Along with the sensitivity settings, leave these default too. They are set for 50%, and that is perfect. Moving on to the left pane there, we got the controller now, and you can do the controller calibration if you're having issues, but most of the time you're not going to change that. I currently use mode 2, and one of the most important things for good cinematic footage is to program this 5-directional button. You need to customize it. Program this 5-directional button to your liking, and this is what settings that I would recommend you change them to. This is the gimbal calibration. This is the gimbal settings, and the most important setting here is your gimbal pitch speed. Set it to 15% if you want that buttery smooth pitch, so it moves really slowly without being jerky or too fast. 15. Okay, and then if we go into this advanced settings, this is where you can adjust your horizon. So a lot of you guys that are having horizon problem, you probably need to adjust your gimbal. Okay, so let's take a look at that real quick, and you can see right now that I'm going to put a level right in front of the camera. Okay, so you would probably even slide it over to the left so you guys can see that, and you can see that that level is almost dead on. I've had to adjust my horizons to minus 0.2 in the R axis. So check this setting, guys. This is important for your horizon issues that you might be having. Okay, let's go ahead and sign out of here. And don't want to save the settings, and it should go into this calibration again. So it's going to go through like the no more power on diagnosis of your servo motors, but once you make those changes, it will go through this again and program, do kind of like a servo memory programming of the servos. The battery icon on the left pane, the battery icon here, just all informative. It just shows you the voltages of each of your 3 cells, your remaining percentage, your capacity to total capacity ratio, and the number of cycles that you have charged this battery. See, you can see I have charged this particular battery 34 times, and I've charged my other battery about 42 times. So I have about 76 flights on my Fimi to date. Left pane 3-dot icon, and that one you can change the map from standard to satellite. I usually recommend standard because it's a map versus having the terrain mapped on top of the map. The other thing below that is the units. I am running a metric, currently running a metric. And if you want to be in the USA and run miles per hour, you want to hit imperial. The next variable below that is your firmware update. I'm going to hit that, and you can see my firmware revisions at this point in time is 1056F, and that was released on August 15th, 2019. And you can see there's so many components of a drone that needs to be updated, right? And then we have the ultrasonic, which is used for landing, and EFCs. Anyway, you guys can read this on your own, but the most important ones are your flight controller, your gimbal, and your camera. Moving back, and the maintenance mode here is yeah, so here we are, guys. This is the gimbal sensors, and you see the roll, pitch, and yaw sensors here. Okay, and then you have your flight log, which I'm not going to show you my flight log. So I am now moving on. Alright, so let's get into the camera settings now, and that's the icon up there with the 3 horizontal bars that have so you can switch between manual and auto mode. And let's go into manual mode, and in manual mode you can switch the ISO by turning the thumb wheel on your right index finger, or you can scroll with your finger. So as you can see, I've scrolled with my finger here and turned it. So I'm going to go back to auto. But one of the things that I wanted to show you is this. And so we'll be going back and forth between the settings and the main screen display. So let's go back to the main screen display. When we have it set to manual, like I have now, as I turn the wheel up, you can see the icon all the way at the bottom changing to 100, 200, 400, 800, and so on, all the way up to 3200, and that's done with the right index finger thumb wheel. Okay, you got that right? So let's get back into it, and now we're going to hit the icon all the way up top that looks like a camera, movie camera, and then we can see the video modes that we can go in here. We can go in time-lapse mode or video mode. Let's show you time-lapse mode. This is actually use this a lot, and I like it a lot. You can change your variables here by hitting that lapse button one more time, and you can change these variables also just by touching them. I thought you could change it with the thumb wheel, but you could not. So I like to keep mine between 1 or 2 second intervals between the time lapse. if you want a 1-minute video, you have to run for 10 minutes in 1-second mode. Okay, so that's how long it takes, but it looks really cool when it's done, right? Okay, let's get back to and put it back in video mode, and go back to the main screen here, and then the format you can choose between PAL and NTSC. Go back here, I have it set to NTSC because of the United States standards, and then the video size is really important. Watch what happens when we click on the 3840. Then we get the options of 30 frames a second or 24 frames a second. And you can see the video adjusting, but this is when you're going to see the major changes coming up. So we're now at 2.7K resolution, which is 2560 by 1440. And when I hit 60 frames a second, you'll see how much we crop in. 60. The video is cropped in, so if you hit 60 frames a second when you're recording, you can use this as a zoom, right? And also, of course, for fast-moving subjects like the water skiing, jet skiing, and the kayakers, you might want to go 60 frames a second on a 2.7K, right? It's much easier to edit. The files are not as big, and that's what I normally use. Now I'm going to hit 24 frames a second. Watch the difference. Big time, right? Not only in how much you crop, but also how much light the sensor is allowing. So really important to note there. So fast moving objects, you want to get a close-up, 60 frames a second. Alright, let's move to HD, which is 1920 by 1080, and watch what happens when I hit 100 frames a second. Boom, right? Not a whole lot of crop, but now I'm going to go 24 frames a second. So 1080p is super nice to have that 100 frames a second, guys. Let's check it out. Not a whole lot of difference with the sensor, right? But now let's move down to 1280 720p. Okay, watch when I hit 200. Bam! Look at that crop factor. Big time, right? So let's use this to our strength, not only to capture the super slow-mo, but also as a telephoto lens. So that is it for these guys. I'm going to go back to 4K 24 frames because it lets the most light into the sensor, and then I am going to go to the video quality. When you hit medium or normal, it doesn't make any difference at all. Yeah, let's just leave this thing on high. That's what I recommend. Okay, so let's now on the white balance, right? And I usually set this to the conditions I'm flying in, so you could most of the times either sunny or cloudy. Very seldom do I use shadow. And I just hit shadow now, and you can see that it didn't really affect much on the scene. So anyway, sunny or cloudy is normally what I shoot at, and that's what I would recommend you guys doing. I'm going to leave it for auto right now. Alright, and I'm going to hit that back button. Okay, now the color. Here's where everybody complains about the bluish color. That's if you leave it into the general. See the blue? Everybody complains. Oh, it's got this bluish tint, blah, 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 right? Look, all you have to do is hit film. Watch how nice and soft it looks now, right? So if you want that incandescent type look, hit general. But if you want like nice soft colors, hit film. And if you really want to oversaturate everything, hit vivid. Black and white is the other choice. Art, not really know the difference between the two, but again, film, very nice. It's most like what ours is seeing. Nostalgia gives you that old film look. But again, film is what I recommend you guys run. Okay? Alright, let's get out of the color. Okay, so I'm going to hit the style variable, and here's what the default variables are: 64 in contrast and 64 in saturation. So I like my saturation to be a little higher, somewhere around 80s. Right about there, I like that. And the contrast to be up there around 80 also. See, if you go too much contrast, how dark it gets. And I've made that mistake in a couple of my videos when I was flying around Marco Island chasing parasails. I made that mistake. So somewhere around 80 on my contrast is what I like. And so I'm, between 70 and 80 is what I've been seeing my best results. Alright, hitting the camera settings again, hitting the movie icon up top, and we have covered everything here. You restart recording, you're not going to be able to change your values, okay? And video sizes, see, they're all grayed out. So that's one of the things that you have to do with the Fimi X8 SE is you have to stop the recording before you can change those variables. Yes, grid lines. And a lot of people do not like the diagonal and grid lines. I just prefer that use the grid lines to try to keep the subjects in the third, right? Especially if the horizon's off, it helps me with those lines. Okay? And it SD card status. It has 115 gigs out of 119. Alright, so let's get into the autonomous. Here we are in the intelligent flight modes, waypoints. You create points on a map, and the drone will fly through those waypoints. Droning. It will fly up and away from you, keeping you centered. Smart Track. It will follow a relationship between the subject and the drone. Tap and Fly allows you just tap to a location and will fly to it. Orbit. It flies around the subject in a fixed radius. Spiral. It will fly around the subject with a variable radius and variable height. Cinematic mode slows down the controls so it'll be smooth. Tripod will slow down all controls even more. Course lock allows you to lock a course and fly to it. Fixed wing is like airplane mode. You can only fly forwards and not backwards. SAR is search and rescue. Records all your flight GPS coordinates. And that is it, guys. Alright, let's move from the Google Map, which is lower left hand corner, to the right. So what you see next to the Google Map, 9.4, that's the pitch of the camera, and I'm going to move the left index finger wheel down, and you see I'm pitching the camera down at 4.1, 5.6, 6.1, and moving it up again to get it up to 10. Positive 10 is the highest that the camera will go up. Okay, so the next variable that you see there is your exposure, and that's set to EV. And let me see if I have everything set to auto, and then we can change the EV with the thumb wheel. I'll show you that. Now we're going to push the thumb wheels up, and I'm changing the exposure, and we're going to go all the way up to the max, which is L. Okay. So now I'm going to turn the thumb wheel towards me and go to the lowest exposure. And again, this is 3.0. So that is the difference. So let me go ahead and push it back up to 0. And there is 0. Okay. Alright, so the next icon you'll see is the ISO icon. And let's get into the camera again and stop the recording first. I'm not going to be able to change it. Then I have to hit M. Okay, and then pushing the thumb wheel up, change it to 100, all the way up to 3200. So thumb wheel will allow you to change the ISO when you have it set to manual. Okay? Alright, so the next variable that you have, back to auto here, there it is what looks like a little aperture wheel, right? And here we go. And if we go to the aperture wheel, right, there is no setting that I see that I can change to change the aperture wheel at all. And then film is obviously the style that we choose. I'm sorry, not the style, but the color that you decide to choose, right? Between general, very blue, to film, nice and soft, right? So there you go. I want to thank you guys for hanging in there this long, and if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button and support the channel, and don't forget to hit that notification bell. And while you're hitting things, also hit that thumbs up button. It really does help the channel. Alright guys, I know that was a lot of information we just went over. The Navi app is a cool app, and there's tons of features and menus that we went over. I just wanted to make sure you knew everything about the Navi app, so when you go out there start flying, you'll be able to get your best footage. So from here on out, it's all about practice. If you want to become a good drone pilot, you need to go out there and just practice, practice, and just practice. And don't forget to keep checking the channel for newer videos that will elevate your game, okay? I'm currently working on a few more videos that should make a difference in the way you fly. That is it for this tutorial. If you want to see more, make sure you subscribe. And if you have any questions or comments, leave them below. I'll make sure to get back to every one of you guys. I want to thank you guys in advance for subscribing, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.